right, what's poppin', y'all? Today we got the homie Josh on the screen. You know what I'm saying? We about to debate. The one we doing today is social work policing. And basically, if we should be integrating social workers in helping as what first responders in those kind of
exactly distress calls, things like that.
Yeah. So I'll let you go ahead and you say why you for, and I'm gonna point out some of the things that I think can be issues with that, and I'm gonna go against. So I go ahead.
All right. Such a gentleman. I appreciate that. That's that Midwest hospitality. So what's up, everybody? My name is Joshua McKee. I'm a social worker, graduate student at Florida State University, and we're here to talk about some heated topics as the Relentless Debate Show usually goes. So I'm a firm believer. I'm a social worker, but at the end of the day, I'm also an activist, and I do believe that the police system, really how it was established, needs a complete remake from top to bottom. It's really hard to reform when you're just trying to do trainings or because police don't care about no sensitivity trainings and things like that. They're police officers at the end of the day. So we need a different way of having first responders coming in to provide, if it's mental health first aid or any type of crisis prevention, because a lot of times you don't need force. The police are there to enforce the law. They shouldn't be handling calls where someone's having a mental breakdown if they're not a threat to other people. So really my opinion is we should have social workers integrated into the first responder protocol. So if someone makes a 911 call and the situation is deemed as this person is having a mental health crisis or a breakdown, send a social worker. Don't send a police officer. That's my argument.
And I can kind of agree with what you're saying. There should be some integration, but I think that just in the specific example or kind of scenario you just brought up, that there could be issues when the social worker may arrive. At what point, if that turns to where they can no longer handle it, when will we find that transition of hey, we need an armed officer or a trained officer? Because, and when I think of a social worker, I mean, we both work in basically social work. I work at foster care. So it's we work with these kind of people. Are these social workers going to be trained to defend themselves? Because yes, they should be trained in de-escalation techniques, which I believe most police officers are not thoroughly trained on it. They might take a class that they can click through and skip through, but are these social workers going to be effectively trained and thoroughly trained on de-escalation techniques? And when it is escalated and they may need to defend themselves or do whatever, will they be trained to do so? Now, I'm not saying they need to be, black belts and all this, but they do need to be able to, something.
Absolutely. They need to be able to defend themselves, because that's the thing. Like you were saying, a situation can get out of control. So essentially this person wasn't a threat to others when you showed up, but maybe when you did show up, it just made things worse. So I definitely do think there needs to be some type of training in being able to protect yourself and others. So being able to identify what the person's wearing, be able to identify their description. And if they start coming towards you, being able to take them down in a non-lethal kind of way, because that's the biggest thing. Police officers get trained on shooting more than anything else. So it's why are officers, being trained on firearms when a lot of times it's not necessary, as we've seen. So I do think there should be some kind of training.
Domestic violence cases are obviously one of the most violent cases. So would that be something that you would recommend a social worker go to, or more of an officer? Because me personally, I'd be if we have a domestic violence issue and me as a man, I'm putting myself in that situation, we have a couple arguing, and then me as a man show up, that other man may now get defensive, period, no matter, because I'm now here to help stop whatever's going on. So now he's defensive. Now, if I'm a cop, he may be 10 times more offensive, because now I'm, just what people think about the police, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But then if I'm a social worker, he might be defensive, oh, you're not gonna do nothing to me anyway. You really need to get out of my face. You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be
for domestic violence. Yeah, for domestic violence, I would say police officer, because when you're in that situation, you could have a potential victim, and there is a fear of violence. So I think if it comes to that, you absolutely need a police officer or police officers to handle that situation. For when it comes to social work policing, I think it's more when you have an individual. So for example, the man who was at the Wendy's drive-thru, that man was clearly having a mental health crisis. It wasn't a domestic violence situation. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't anything like that. He needed a social worker. but instead he got police officers who felt, their safety was compromised immediately. So I think it would be more of an internal issue that a person's having rather than a confrontation between two other people, because usually that does require some type of authoritative figure to say, calm down, let's not take it there, but trust me, I can match you.
Yeah. So what would it look like? Let's say, and I'm just trying to get into it because I think this is a potential good idea, but I think that some people, and I won't even say you, but irrational people take it too far. They'll say no police, just social workers, and let them figure it out. What would the average social worker look like? What would the training look like? How will we be one to like, would they carry handcuffs? Would they carry like pepper spray? Would they carry any kind of weapons? Like, what would it be like a plain clothes kind of situation? Like, you just need to have a badge to identify yourself. That's it. We're not going to show up, walkie-talkies, bulletproof vests, because that's an intimidating thing. And some people don't understand that. If you open your door and there's a man or a woman there with a bulletproof vest on, guns, handcuffs, all that makes it look real to you, especially if you're not used to being around firearms or police officers. A certain level of fear or anxiety may kick in. Now, if you see somebody with some plain clothes, I'm just curious, like, what would you want that to look like? Because that plays a role in how serious they may or may not take that individual.
Right. So in my opinion, I don't think social workers should carry cuffs because, I don't know what the laws are on citizen arrest, but if the social worker is coming into any type of law enforcement, they need to know the law, but they also need to know where they're limited. So we don't want someone who's coming in, they're like, yeah, I'm a big bad social worker, I handle this, and they're arresting all these people and violating their, rights. So I think that would be an issue. When it comes to something like mace, I think if you can carry mace regularly without having any type of training or license, that's fine. But when you cross that line of carrying a firearm or carrying cuffs or anything like that, I think it's too much. Because at the end of the day, you're not there to forcefully detain somebody. You're there to see if they need first aid. You're there to see if they need crisis prevention team to come in and maybe they're at risk or they need to be Baker Act or something like that. You're not necessarily there to stop a threat. And that needs to be the first and foremost training that you receive. When that happens, that's when you pick up your walk and you're like, listen, I need, police, like right away. You're not the person to take that into your own hands.
Okay. And I think that was one of my biggest issues is like, I feel like when people talk about, hey, we should have social workers, I'm like, I don't think people understanding how real situations get very. So like, maybe like, hey, I'm the social worker and you the police officer. We ride together, or maybe you drop me off and hey, you gonna park up the street. They don't need to see your car here or whatever, and just be like, hey, I got this button on my walkie. If I push this button, that means I need your assistance here. Like now, my word be like, hey, if you got a call for some, we know police response times, even today, especially, have slowed up tremendously because of their fear of when possibly getting into something, and then a lot of petty crimes going on. There's not enough staff or whatever. So it's like they need to be there. If we need them, they need to be here quickly. And I think that you just have to really understand it. Well, the social worker really has to understand when things have gone too far past their past what they can control. Because I think something
and it's a system that needs to be monitored. So like, when policy comes out, there's like a 3-step with policy. It's implementation, monitoring, and I forgot the last one. Is basically if it needs to be changed, changing it. So of course, I think in the beginning stages, maybe you would need to have a police officer who might drop a person off and they're waiting back in the car. The civilians don't see the car, but the police officer is there if they need them. And then kind of see how often that social worker needs to call that police officer and see. There could be certain situations. So maybe you categorize them. So maybe this doesn't need a police officer, this situation does. But it's something that needs to be monitored and seeing if it's actually working, because that's the thing that never happens. And that's why we have a broken system, because it never gets that, all right, well, this happened, so we're going to do this instead. It's kind of just, well, this is what we do, and we're going to keep doing it whether it's working or not. So that's my biggest thing. And the main goal is to reduce police officers taking things to a level that they don't need to go to. Because statistically, we see way too many police murders. And I'm going to run some through you right quick. So in 2020, there were over 1,000 fatal police shootings. So that is 1,021 police shootings in 2020. There've already been 523 civilians shot this year in 2021. So we have to take a different approach that protects the citizens better, because police are going to do what they have to do at the end of the day, or they're going to do what they felt they were forced to do at the end of the day. And the only person that's going to know what really happened is the person that's there to tell the story. Right. Most of the time it's the police.
Okay. With these shootings, those will be like I think that a social worker being there would help. And I'm not saying like but like there's situations we've seen plenty of videos when like the cop is getting very escalated and the individual's getting very escalated. And now they're about ready to, they have hands on weapons. They've said like, look, it's about to escalate right now. I think those are important situations where a social worker or just a sane individual who has their wits about them that has, look, I understand what the risks are. I understand what's going on. Like somebody needs to be able to bring those situations down. But the problem, so if we reallocate like, hey, y'all only respond to the big stuff, then I'm almost afraid that they coming in like, this is what we doing. We not here to do no talking. I think cops or police officers, they should almost always be involved and have that training with the social worker. So they should have the same training as the social workers. And the cop would be nothing but that person, plus they are also carrying a firearm. You know what I'm saying? Plus I think that if you're just saying that police officers only show up to the violent stuff and social workers only show up to the non-violent petty stuff, then you're gonna have it like you're gonna create a.
So you worried that the police are gonna be more of like warriors at this point? Are gonna be like, listen, we got the call. We already said the social workers, like we like SWAT.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried. Like they'll pull up, like, cause I know me, like when I used to work in a residential, we'll be chilling, but when they call us, like, hey, we got a situation going. I know when I show up, it's no more talking. It is straight chaos when we pull up. You know what I'm saying? Just like, hey, if the homeboys go somewhere to, hey, like Chris, bro, hey, just be here, just in case something pop off. And then they say, hey, pull up. I'm not talking to anybody I don't know getting swung on. Like
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. But aren't the police already like that at the end of the day? Like not much is really changing.
Yeah, and I hear you with that. And I think that maybe the social worker can create like a buffer for that. Like, hey, I understand what you think you about to walk into, but like it's a code, whatever, we can code blue, red, green, whatever system they
want. Because they can look at the situation, because I'm sure as if you're working in fire security, you probably look at the home and you're like looking for certain things. So like, is there a bed? Is there food in the fridge? The same way social workers can be trained to say, okay, is there any, holes in the wall? Are there any firearms or any bullet casings or anything that could determine that the situation is potentially lethal? They can be trained the same way. And again, like when it comes to going into residence, that could be the cutoff. So like social workers will not enter residence. They will handle more public. So someone in public, that can be a threat to themselves or others, or however, because there's certain things that social workers can't do. We know that. And we need the police for those kind of things. But at the same time, we don't want to, wacky and have somebody thinking like it's a Rambo situation and they like already put like the rifle out the car, like, okay, well, they just like things.
No, like, no. So, okay. So
that could possibly happen.
Yeah. So what are we thinking about? I'm going to just go down like different situations. You'll be like, just let me know if like that's a caseworker thing or not. So, or a social worker. So we got traffic stops. No. Okay.
No, I don't think you need to send social worker to traffic stops. No.
What about theft, like petty theft, like just like maybe someone stole out of Walmart, the gas station, things like that?
That's a good one. I'm gonna go with no, only because I feel like I'll say no for that one. We'll just say no.
What about age? Are we keeping it? Because, and I'm just thinking these off the top of my head, like maybe if there's an age between 15 and under, you're like, hey, we should probably maybe send a social worker, because they're kids. Yeah. I think that when you see in the cop, sometimes those situations, those escalate. So would there be an age factor that would definitely be like, oh, send a social worker?
Yeah, no, I think so. Because even working in housing, we have meetings with police officers that work specifically in our communities, and they go and they answer calls and things like that. And I think that when it comes to age, if an officer is there for the parents, there's really no one there for the kids. So I think when it comes to things like that, we could certainly have a social worker out if there's minors, within the household that may need some type of services or anything. Because at the end of the day, police are going to do what they have to do, and then the kids are kind of just like, they get the stuff after, but maybe they need certain things, right away, or maybe they need this explained to them in terms they can understand. And police don't always do that.
Yeah,
so
have time to do it. I mean, especially like
right.
popping off, they gotta, maybe they're arresting people now that like kids screaming, crying. There needs to be a person my job is not to handcuff nobody. I'm just here to work with those people. So I think that would be a good thing. But how we, mental health and being on maybe high on a drug can maybe be confused to like someone who's not sure. So someone can be like, hey man, there's someone like doing this weird stuff, blah, blah. They could be high on fentanyl, or they could just be having like a mental breakdown. You wouldn't know. So how would we know who to send to those kind of situations? Like, would it just be maybe?
I think you need to, in that situation, I think we could probably send a social worker. And if that's the case, if they don't know, that's where you kind of use whatever training that they have before to kind of either keep their distance or advise other, people to kind of keep their distance, and then kind of monitor from afar. Okay. So they're not in, any type of physical harm range. Okay. Because like knives are like one of the deadliest weapons ever. So you never want to be that close to someone that you don't know. But you can still shout and be like, hey, what's going on? You all right? An ambulance, what happened? We're acting like this, et cetera, et cetera. So that could potentially be another way to cut down on that.
Like, so what certifications or whatever would they have?
I think CPR and like first aid is definitely one. So like if they ever have someone who maybe they show to a call and maybe they are on drugs or something like that, maybe they're overdosing. They should certainly have some type of first aid training for that, and also have the tools necessary. So like if they need to, do whatever in medical training. I think that it should be similar to almost like an EMT.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It kind of sounds, because I'm trying to think like, how would this be best like implicated? Like, because it sounds good, right? It sounds like, I think rational people understand that this could be a good thing, but it's just like, how we implement it? Because it sounds like this could be something that an EMT could definitely do. Like, hey, I know they got a lot of stuff, but maybe like you get the same training as an EMT or paramedic, or like even a fireman, they all kind of have like generally the same trainings. Mix that in with a social worker, and that's what we want. They don't arrest people. They don't do none of that. They just here to just make sure you're healthy, you're safe, and we're removing you from danger. And I just feel like some of the difficulties with just this idea is that you ain't got like if you can't enforce nothing, people gonna really be like, boy, get out of my face. So it's like they're gonna have to be so trained. I think they're gonna have to be so trained, and they gotta have to be confident in themselves. Like, this can't be one of those jobs that you take a little trainings online and all that.
Oh yeah. No. This is not you do a 1 to 12, do a like 12-hour workshop and that's it. No, this is like an intensive, like 30-day, 6-month long thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my biggest work, because you can't, we all have jobs that we like, dang, I still don't know what I'm doing. This can't be one of those jobs. You need to start, and you need to be ready. You need to have like a period of which you're partnering with other people. Also, I don't think they should ever go by themselves. I think these social workers, I think 2 people is okay. Even if one just maybe like stands to the side, but I think in a welcoming presence. Don't be in there like straight face, just all angry, like read the room and all that. But the training is essential. Like it's so important. And I think that if we're going to have these social workers do this, like if we all, okay, we're going to do this. Thorough training.
No, absolutely. I could not agree more.
Okay, yeah, it gotta be thorough, because that would just be my only worry. And like they would, I don't mean to sound dramatic, they're gonna have to be able
to fight
some kind of martial art. Some kind of martial art.
Know how to defend themselves. Yes, and honestly, learning like self-defense, everybody should know that.
Exactly. And I think most people, we understand you should know how to defend yourself, but some people don't know how to fight, never been in any kind of conflict. And so if something happens, it's immediate shock factor, which I believe was happening with some of these police officers. If you ain't never been in a fight in your life, like you ain't never been in street fights and all that, all you did was like fight your little brother or something, that don't count. I'm talking about actual fighting somebody who don't like you.
Yeah.
It kind of hurts you. If you ain't never been in no fights like that, the first time somebody hits you or touch you, you feel like you're finna die. And I feel like that's how a lot of stuff end up happening. But if you're trained, and I don't know what martial art would be best, but something that maybe you can do some kind of restraints or holds, like, hey, you get hit, push you, relax, just hold them down, and you're able to, and that's why I would say there needs to be another person there. Because if something like that happens, it's gonna be hard for you to be able to, hey, I need.
No, that's true. I agree. Yeah, and there's a variety of different things they can learn, like, and that's where we have to really be intentional about the kind of program we want, right? Like you were saying, we don't want it to be, one-time little certificate, whatever. Yeah. It's gonna take a lot of time. It's gonna take money, and I think a lot of the reasons why we have issues even with the police is because they don't always get that time and money. The police have a huge budget, but a lot of that just goes into salary. A lot of that goes into equipment that's never even used, SWAT teams that are never even called. They could be doing a lot more training and having them as qualified professionals, because if you're enforcing the law, there's no reason you should make anything less than like a good 50, 60 G's a year. Yeah. And you should have a degree with it that comes, with it in the law, a degree in social work, a degree in health, things like that. Like we should treat the police officers and, compensate them accordingly and look for a different type of police officer. Because a lot of people don't want to be police. Yeah. So we don't have a lot of them.
And it's crazy. Like when I graduated, like really for the most of my life, I either wanted to go to the military or the police. Like that's what I wanted to do. Like from a little kid, like I was like, I'm gonna be a cop or I'm gonna be in the military. But as I grew up, I'm like, y'all just don't really seem like y'all doing anything good. Like we would have that one cop that, we'd be cool. We're like, oh, you cool, bro.
Like Officer White.
Yeah, nah, bro. He wrote me a ticket, bro. He wrote me and the homies a ticket. Yeah, nah.
Y'all doing? If Officer White wrote you a ticket, I was doing something.
But it was a real ticket, bro. It wasn't even like no look, bro. We came, and y'all gonna listen to this. We was coming. It was like the first day of camp, football camp. And we came in the parking lot. It was nobody else there. We came in there speeding or whatever and parked. Like, I think the only thing he heard was the tires squeak. Like, we came in, parked, and just walked right into the theater. Apparently, he said he was calling our name. I ain't heard him saying nothing. I didn't even see him. I didn't, we young, we just run around, blah, blah. Yeah. This dude he came in the meeting and called us out. Bro, ended up giving us 2 tickets. So now Officer White ain't one there. He a cool dude. He a cool dude. But that was hot. I was hot. But anyway, like my thought of police officers, I was all like, man, if I become a police officer, what am I gonna be able to do myself to help? Because we know how it's like one of those, once you get into that community, it's like it's kind of hush hush. Like if you speak out, you can be held, like you can get in trouble legally because of like just what they got going on. So, I mean, there's people like me. I wanted to be a police officer. I was like, man, I can't, how am I really going to help my people? Because like, I wanted to be like that black face in the community. Like, hey, man, like, hey, I understand what you're going through. You feel me? But like, you can't do certain stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? But, so it's going to be hard. I think definitely you would have to pay these people what they need to be paid, but only if they are trained how they need to be trained. So the training needs people to pay. And I think that's, you kind of point out, like, you're going to be trained in all these things. You're going to be paid accordingly. And I feel like if we have the proper people trained and the proper people, doing what they're supposed to do, you won't need as many. You know what I'm saying? We can have some part-time police officers that, hey, we're going to call you. It's like, there's like a big standoff or like, there's something crazy going on. But if we have officers and social workers, whatever, that are good at their job, you won't need a bunch. You won't need, at least that's what I'm thinking. So then you'll be able to pay people accordingly. You'll be like, look, we don't need all these people because we're doing it right. We figured out how to do this. And my only worry is like time, how long it's going to take to get started, who's going to be the first one to take the plunge and all that. But I think we got something.
Everything starts out as a pilot program, like right now, they're trying to launch it in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is like right outside of Tampa. Mm-hmm. And it's actually been going pretty well. Like even the mayor of that city said the program has been working, and they've handled, I think, like at least 1,000 calls in the last like 6 months. And they said the social workers were actually doing pretty good. there hasn't been any violence, nothing like that. No one's getting attacked, nothing like that. So it's something that could work. We just have to at least, pilot it and see how it goes.
All right.
So, yeah, I don't know if anyone's gonna want to be that first social worker who's like,
Oh, me. I mean, hey, if they pay, yeah, if they pay right, and like with the jobs we do, we don't do it for the money. So like if I feel like I'll be safe and they go give me the proper training, I definitely do it. But just who gonna start it up? We need money, we need politicians, all that to kind of get that stuff cracking. So hopefully, what you said, hopefully they get it right, and then hopefully it set the precedent, and then people like, you know what, it can be done. It can be done. So,
and I think it will.
All right, man. We're gonna see.